Hi, welcome back to LivAnimated.com. Let's learn something new. I have someone here with me who is very important, one of the best technical recruiters in the game that I have come across and had the opportunity to work with. We're talking about Jeff Lawniczak. Hey, man, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
It's good to have you.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
It's good to have you here.
I remember I convinced you to move from Texas. I thought that was a nice trick.
That's right. You sure
You
did.
didn't want to move.
Well, it's nice in Texas,
Yeah,
and things are really cheap there.
I know.
So you kind of...
I had to work it.
You forced my hand. I had to
Right.
double up on everything. Everything was so much more expensive out here.
Yeah, and here you are.
Yeah, thanks. So what we like to do is, as you know, this show is geared towards people who are enthusiasts, people who are probably in school. They're looking to get into the games industry. We are talking with a technical recruiter here today. Jeff works at Ubisoft. Some people say it different, but it's Ubisoft.
It is
right?
Ubisoft, yeah.
He's a senior technical
It's short
recruiter.
for ubiquitous software, if you knew that.
Nice. That's
It's
awesome.
everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what do you do there? What is your day-to-day like?
Well, I'm responsible for building up a number of studios. They have like 40 studios around the world. I'm responsible for San Francisco. There's a studio in Osaka. They have a studio in Atlanta. So I'm responsible for building up the development team. So I've been working in games for 25, 30 years, and all disciplines: art, animation, design, production. That's kind of my specialty.
Yeah, you did a good job in building a team over at Red 5.
Yeah.
Like, as you can see, a lot of people went on to do big things.
Tremendous
from the studio.
success. I mean, we have some designers that are VP of design at Riot now. We've got a lot of people that went to Blizzard. Almost everyone ended up at a great space. It was a great company to breed and find great talent, and we made a great product. It was just by happenstance of the games industry that things didn't work out, but that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, you did an amazing job bringing everybody
Thanks.
together. When I look back and think about it, I'm just like, man, there was a lot of talent
Yeah.
in one space. It was not often you come across something like that.
Well, don't forget, the games industry is one of the last bastions where it's really and truly a collective environment. You can't make a game by yourself. You need
So true.
you need collaboration, and you need to be on site right next to people at your side. And all collaborations have to work together. And it's also one of the most complex softwares in the world. I mean, people talk about aerospace and flying missiles through the air, but can you imagine having a technology where you can press a button on a computer and somebody in Shanghai is seeing immediate special effects,
Response feedback from someone
audio,
else. Yeah, from someone else across the world.
It's unbelievable. And there's millions doing it concurrently. I mean, I challenge anyone to do that on the software side. So, and because it's also tends to be a fairly lucrative business, if you have 150 developers and they can do a game, like look at what Fortnite's doing. You got 150 people, and yet it's generating, I don't even know,
Billions.
30 million
Billions.
a day.
Billions a month.
And so they know their value.
Yeah.
So those people are really highly competitive to find. Yeah. And so you have to know how to woo them, and you have to know how to keep them, and you have to know how to retain them. So it's a challenge.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now let's go back. We're going to go back
Okay.
to 1974. You may want to go back earlier than that. The 70s
I wouldn't mind
was
going
like-
back earlier than that.
Okay. So we're going to go all the way back. You were a young, budding college student going to
Yeah.
the University of Michigan
Yeah.
for philosophy.
I was the president of the philosophy club.
I saw that. I saw that on your...
Thank you very much.
So
Yeah.
it looks like even early then you were all about corralling people, getting people to stand behind your vision, building teams, building out projects. So what...
I was also president of my class.
Did you already know?
Yeah.
Did you already know that you want to go into like a human research?
There was no such field like that.
Recruiting.
No,
You didn't.
no.
There was nothing like that.
Nothing
So
like that.
Did you
at
know you
all.
wanted to get into games or media? I mean,
there
back in
wasn't
the
even.
70s,
We had some, Atari. I mean, we had some things that looked like games that we could play on TV. Pong came out. Wow, that was
Commodore
really fun
and
and
stuff
cool.
like that, yeah.
I hate to even talk like this because
Yeah.
I'm really dating myself, but I really got hooked after I graduated from school
Yeah.
and met. Like a lot of people do, they fell in love, chased a girl out to California, and I had never been to California in Michigan, and I'm 21 years old, and I'm in Berkeley, and I'm walking around Thanksgiving in a T-shirt, and I couldn't believe it. I could not. Now you can
Nice.
do that in Michigan because of global warming.
Yeah.
But back then you
It's
couldn't.
getting hot.
Yeah. So I just packed my bags and moved to California. And I was a stockbroker at the time, which was, looking back, a great training ground because they really trained you in how to have client relationships, how to work with, getting people, prospecting people, finding good good
Wait, so
talent.
were you building portfolios
I was.
and building clients, or
Yeah,
were you
both.
doing the day-to-day trading and stuff
Both.
like that too?
No. I was responsible for client development.
Okay.
So, and then a friend of mine, so I was in California doing that. A friend of mine, Silicon Valley was just starting to explode, and a friend of mine was doing recruitment for engineers. And I have a brother that's an engineer, so I kind of grew up in that environment. That was not a foreign environment to me. And I knew how to kind of talk the talk. And then I bought a Sega Genesis, had just come out.
So it sounds like you were into games. You were into new media,
When the
new
Sega
technology.
Genesis came out, I was like, holy crap, this is going to be something
So
awesome.
you bypassed Nintendo, Game Boy. You didn't.
No,
do
that
it?
Genesis was like the first, even before Nintendo. I mean, it kind of like, I can't remember. Maybe I don't know. You're giving me the evil eye.
No, it's.
I'd like to look at the facts.
It was so. I think it was Atari. Well, if you
Okay.
go back way far, it's
Okay.
Intellivision, Commodore, and then you have your Atari 2600, and then they had another one, Atari 7800, something like that.
Right.
And then they went into Nintendo,
Okay, so you're
and
telling
then it's
me
Nintendo,
All right.
and then Sega Genesis came out after, because it was Sega first. The Sega console just came out, and then it was Sega Genesis. That was like their response to Nintendo's.
I think I might have bought the Sega Genesis because so I started a technical recruitment firm with my buddy.
Oh, okay.
And then there was a company called Epyx, EPYX.
Yeah. I think that's up in here.
And they did a handheld.
Well, you were at Search Tech first.
Yeah, that was my company,
Oh, that was your company.
my company, and we started getting these clients.
Okay.
So we got Epyx that was doing a handheld device,
There you go, right there. Yeah.
and
1989 to 1991.
there's people that still talk to me about that because they
wow.
were like the first like Game Boy, like
Yeah.
nothing was like that.
Okay.
And then those people left when Sega came to Sega America. They set up a studio in Redwood Shores, and people started going to work there. And so they looked to us to find them talent. In fact, there's a guy, I can talk about names, can't I? Because people.
You can talk about whatever you want.
So there's a guy, Ed Annunziata, who just like celebrated his 30th. I don't know. He sent me an email going, Jeff, you started. There was not even the concept of a producer at the time. Like,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so somebody was telling me, hey, I need somebody who really knows a combination of 2D art and can kind of manage a project. We don't really. I think we're going to call him a producer. And so Ed was like the first guy that started at Sega. And at the same time, Electronic Arts was starting to take off as well. And they were located also in Redwood Shores at the time. And so Sega went through and eventually they brought me on board. And the director of technology at Sega Technical Institute was a guy named Mark Cerny, who is now the lead architect on the PlayStation. He was lead architect on the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4. And he and I worked together to start finding engineering talent, and we worked on Sonic Spinball that they developed in the U.S.
That's crazy.
And,
So even back in '89, you were working with these people who just turned into like.
and then these
huge
people
bigwigs
turned
in
into
the-
huge bigwigs, and it kind of took me along for the ride.
Right.
And we can talk about
What
how
was
that
your
ride
first
developed.
experience in getting into recruiting? I think we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. So
Yeah, it
you
was-
mentioned before, like you got a taste of recruitment, and you had the engineer. Your family was in engineering, and you were talking about bringing on engineers. But when did you get that first taste of doing recruiting?
Well, as I said, I met my good friend who was doing contract recruiting
Okay.
in Silicon Valley as it started to explode.
Okay.
And he said, hey, you ought to get into this. They can't find people. This is really great. And he was showing me how to do it. So we formed a company called Search Tech. And
Okay,
so
okay.
that's how I started developing
Got you.
clients, and one client led to the games industry, and that's when I fell in love with the games industry and eventually got pulled into that industry.
That space, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So after working at Epyx, you went right into working for Sega.
I did.
So you got them as a client, and then you were like, you know what? Hey, how about I work for you guys?
Yeah,
Is that how that went down?
Yeah, they were really, really interested because they didn't have anybody to find
It was
talent.
new.
It was
The
all
industry
brand
was
new.
just bubbling.
All brand new. And I like to tell some amazing stories, like even their QA department. We had this director of QA, this woman, Cindy Clavern, and she would bring people like, how are you going to find people? Like, we really need people, attention to detail, people that play a lot of games. And she used to bring people in one room and talk to them for like 15, 20 minutes, take them into another room and say, hey, who were you just talking to? Oh, I was talking to John Wilcox. What kind of shirt was John wearing? Oh, John was wearing, do you remember anything about the room? Could you describe the room to me? Well, the room was, okay, thank you. And versus another person. Oh, I was talking to John Wilcox. He was wearing a blue shirt with red stripes. Yeah, there were kind of red stripes with little fuzzy things in between. Oh, yeah, the blue, they had this like Picasso on the left wall. It's kind of weird, and a poster of, some Mario game on the right wall, and it was like a blue carpeting, like,
you're hired.
You're hired.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that good?
Yeah, that's pretty good. There's
like
a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
some people still use that kind of technique to,
the technique of observation.
Well, for quality
and,
assurance, because you have to
right.
be really attuned to,
Details.
detail,
Yes.
finding bugs, communication, reporting bugs, detail on reporting bugs, right? Well, I found a bug in level 3. Okay, well, what about, what am I
Yeah.
reading this for? There's
Yeah.
a bug in level 3. That kind of thing.
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. So you worked there for 2 years. You're responsible for staffing up the original Sega development team, including
Yep.
the producers and staffing.
Yeah.
What drew you towards technical recruiting as opposed to just recruiting?
Well, I still do this.
Right,
all
now
the
you
full
do
spectrum.
everything.
I've always done that, but
Okay.
I'm kind of known because finding the technical talent is really, really difficult.
Okay.
It's probably the most difficult because it's so competitive, and some people are afraid of it because they can't talk the talk. And I'm not saying I'm a technologist or understand the inner workings of all the technology, but I do understand the general basics concepts, and I can communicate that to applicants, and I can communicate that to client when I interview an applicant.
Yeah, and I know even through our conversations, I've seen like you'll ask animation questions or ask questions
Right.
about process.
So I
and
have-
exporting.
I
So
have
you're good at that.
I have that skill set.
Yeah.
And that was given to me by the people that kind of mentored me along the way. Like Mark Cerny, I mentioned earlier, he had created it. His claim to fame was at, I think, 14 or 15. He created Marble Madness. I don't know if you know this game.
I remember that. I played that.
It
I believe I
was-
played that
yeah.
on the Nintendo.
So by the time he showed up at Sega,
Yeah.
he was probably like 20 years. I mean, we were all super
Wow.
young. I'm probably 27,
That's a
but
good
he was
game.
probably 21 or something. And then I would never forget, and I worked with him for a number of years. He eventually went on to Crystal Dynamics, took me to Crystal Dynamics, and eventually to Universal Studios, and he formed Naughty Dog. We'll talk about that going forward. But one of the things he said, Jeff, the difference between a really top-notch programmer and somebody who's not is not like A to B. It's exponential. It's like 10 to 20 times. So we've got to find and he would have a C++ test that we would give to people. Like he was like, we need to find top talent. It makes all the difference in the world. If you think about the games industry as opposed to like any other industry, we're not buying cement and building anything. It's all talent. It's all intellectual property. It's all people that come together. And they put a lot of money into that, right? It's not easy to make a AAA product in today's world. Some of these budgets are like 150, 200, 300 million. And that's a big bet for people to place. So, and you're betting it on the talent that you have. So that's why it's so important. And that's why someone like me is so critical to a development process.
Yeah, it's very important. I think what we've seen in our time working together is that getting the right people makes all the difference. Even one wrong person could start a cataclysmic event where they'll start to negatively influence people, and there's a downhill ride you got to take from that, and then building from that. I've seen you go from building out a lot of people and having a lot of influence over people that has a high imagination or imaginations for coming together and working together as a cohesive unit. And then I've seen us, when we work together, things went a little south, and then you had to rebound from that because you had to we had to go through like either layoffs, and then we had to recruit more people to pick up more ground and then stay doing what we're doing. Like it was crazy.
It's
very difficult
It's
job.
a very challenging business, and and anything can change on a dime. You can't, and
Are people just leaving, and you're like,
people
oh,
can
this guy
leave.
was our number one guy,
And you have no idea. Like one day, in today's world, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's nice, and the next day they're gone. It's the same thing with people showing up in interviews. I mean, just when I say I've seen everything, I can't even say that anymore because people say, oh yeah, I'll show up Tuesday at 3. Yeah. Tuesday at 3, like what happened to Jimmy? And nowadays people don't even want to say no. They're afraid. Instead, they hide under a rock, and they're just like, what do they call that now? Dead air, or silent?
Ghosting.
There
they
you go.
Ghost you,
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're ghosted.
They'll take you all the way through. You're buying the
Right.
airfare. You're buying.
Right.
You set up the hotel rooms. Next thing you know,
Exactly.
they're like, they didn't show up or they didn't call.
But that's still rare. I mean, let's not forget. 90% of the times, human beings meet. We're normal people.
Yeah.
We're
Sometimes
excited.
normal.
We're excited.
Yeah.
We're excited to join the project.
Yeah.
They're excited to have you.
Yeah.
And it all works out.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a beautiful thing, right?
That is. It's very special to bring a team together or form a team, and then you start seeing people shine and go like, man, this dude is hitting on all cylinders.
Right.
Everything's going great.
And everybody's happy.
It's rare though.
And then the candidate says, hey, Jeff, I remember the time you first pinged me or we first talked on the phone.
Yeah.
And here I am. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people are usually very appreciative too, which is nice.
That's good. That's good. And it seems like with what you do, a lot of it is keeping in contact with people that you've worked with before.
I've read a lot of books about networking and how to, which is really good. And I would encourage people to have that skill set. I mean, there's some mundane things that people talk about all the time, but I think it's really important. And my takeaways from the networking books I've read is you need to have your spiel down. What do you do? And they call it the elevator pitch for a reason, because most people, they're not even, you talk to people, they're not even tuning in. So you got to get them tuned in. Hey, what do you do? Hey, I do technical recruitment in the video game business, retaining talent that makes products seen by millions. Oh,
yeah.
And you want
more. You're like,
you
okay,
want the
great.
people. You want the people to say, "Oh,"
yeah.
so that you can tell them more.
Right. Because you can
So
you can
you wanna
judge
get
it
a
based off of if you say your
conversation
elevator pitch and they're just not interested. You're like, okay, well,
Right.
you see the game
Who
last
cares?
night? they
Yeah,
don't
who
want to
cares?
talk about work. So
Yeah. Right.
So now you go to Crystal Dynamics, like you mentioned before. You met someone at the Sega Technical Institute when you were. They took
Crystal
you
Dynamics was really interesting. I was like the 5th person there.
94. That's there was a Gecko game, right?
Yeah. In fact,
remember that.
Lyle Hall was the producer on that, and he went on to form Iron something Studios. What is it in LA?
Iron Forge.
No, not Iron Forge. Oh my God, Heavy Iron.
Heavy Iron. Okay.
Heavy Iron
Okay.
Studios.
I've heard of that.
And yeah, it was a game called Gex, and it was a platform
Gecko,
game
yeah.
with a gecko.
That was on Sega.
It was on Sega, and it's an interesting story because Mark Cerny went from Sega, and by the way, Crystal Dynamics was founded by two women, Madeline Canepa and Judy Lang. Both of them came from Sega. Madeline Canepa was one of like the first marketing person. Very dynamic person, kind of person that walks into a room and everybody just says, where do we go? Yeah, I'll follow you anywhere,
Yeah, and Crystal Dynamics had a bunch of story-driven video games that were just breaking all the barriers and breaking all the walls down.
And our president was Strauss Zelnick, who is now the CEO of Take-Two Interactive, which is like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Geronimo Barrera, which I brought in as a QA guy, is the guy that came up with Grand Theft Auto. I mean, I'll never forget. I tell this story a lot. So we had an arcade in the back area where I sat with the QA team, and there was an arcade called Taxi Driver. You would just pick up people and drive them around in a taxi.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. They had an arcade shell of that when you go to
And right next to it was Street Fighter. And Geronimo used to say, somebody ought to be combining these two games, man. This is too good.
That's awesome.
And now he's like,
that's pretty cool.
Grand Theft Auto guy, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he was like 20 years old. Now he's like, I don't know, 50-year-old guy with a long beard. And, he's like the guy that did
Total gamer.
Grand Theft Auto, But there's a lot of people like that.
That's cool.
And Crystal Dynamics was formed because 3DO was coming out. So it was going to be the first 3D game.
3DO was more about doing video cinematics, like live action stuff. And they had those huge discs at one point. Yeah, I remember that. It didn't... I think they were taking a bet on media
It
And the
didn't take
mediums,
off the
it
way
didn't take
everybody
off.
expected it to.
Exactly. It didn't do
But
well.
Crystal placed his bet on 3DO.
Yeah.
And, the name Crystal Dynamics, Madeline was like, whiteboarding. And whiteboarding is like, hey, I keep telling people when I give ideas to people, whiteboarding is all about, you're not supposed to say, that's a dumb idea, Jim. You're supposed to just throw the ideas on the wall.
Put anything up there.
Right, anything. And then later on, you might discuss it. But at the time of the moment, you don't go, Edward, where'd you get that? That's dumb.
Yeah.
None
It's
of
brainstorming.
that.
That's
Brainstorming. Thank you. So they were brainstorming. She wanted something, 2 words. One word would be something beautiful and precious, and the other would be some kind of verb that would action. And so Crystal Dynamics, there you go.
That's
and
awesome.
also CD.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything's on a CD.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that's how they came up with that.
So we made Gex, and that was a time where people were sleeping like.
There were more than one game though.
There was more than one game.
Yeah.
There was another one called Sun, something about this solar something. I can't remember. And Steve White was our lead engineer who went on to what's that studio that did up in Seattle? I can't remember. But
That's fine.
yeah. So Crystal made Gex and a lot of these other 3D games, and Mark Cerny then got called by Universal Studios because the movie business didn't want to miss out on the games business.
Yeah, there was a huge time where there was a lot of movie products, tie-ins with games, and a lot of people made a lot of money.
They had never done that before.
Yeah.
So they brought Mark Cerny down to Universal Studios, and he said, Jeff, I need you down here because we want to start a couple companies, and we're going to start a couple companies. And he hired Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin, who once again were like 20-year-olds that just did this game called Way of the Warrior. And Andy was a technologist, and he had done something unique that you can get motion and movement with his characters in Way of the Warrior if you look at this game. And Mark had just come from making Gex, this platform, and they wanted to do a platform game. So he brought me down, and with Jason and Andy, we started Naughty Dog, and at the same time, concurrently, he started Insomniac with Ted Price and British guy, Andy, I can't remember his name. But anyway, and they were working on another game that they had in mind. And I remember we went to Universal Studios. Was so fun because you got to drive around in those carts and act like a movie star. And
so you were on the film set, right?
I was right there. It was so cool, and like they had Alfred Hitchcock's little hut or something where Steven Spielberg was, and his Amblin Entertainment was right next door to us. And Naughty Dog had, I just saw Jason Rubin. He had a dog named Morgan that he brought on every day, hence the name Naughty Dog. This Morgan was just a beautiful dog.
Yeah, they do the whole kennel.
Whole thing.
It's all dog related.
The whole
there,
thing. Yeah, they did a great job. And we were in the commissary there eating, and Mark was talking about the game, and he goes, "Hey, we're thinking about a Bandicoot. Do you know about it?" I go, "Mark, I don't know. What is it? What is a Bandicoot?"
Yes. Yeah, the Crash Bandicoot series was a big deal. That came out. I mean, they even redid it. They
it was
remastered it
launched.
recently.
It was what did they call it? Branded when it came out with the platform with PlayStation 1.
It was just a launch title.
Yeah,
it was a launch title that came
for
out
the PlayStation 1.
It was like their mascot. How Sega, like Sonic the Hedgehog was Sega's mascot.
They just recently released like 3 Crash Bandicoot games, and my kids are all like, "Oh, Dad, Crash Bandicoot." They look at that like it's something from the like 1920s or
they
something.
They remastered it. I think they went from doing cartoony games, which people thought, oh, it's a great way to get into the industry, but then they went into doing a lot more things that were realistic.
They did.
Looking. I mean, they did do Jack and Daxter. You can't forget that.
That's another.
That was amazing, and it showed off their animation skills, their animation quality.
Yeah, but now they're doing like the Last of Us series. It's like
Right.
unbelievable cinematic, man. It's just beautiful.
And and they've been able to make I think it's been like 4 titles for Last of Us, or not Last of Us. Last of Us is going to the second one. Drake's Uncharted. That was another big one.
And they have Evan Wells now, who's like, these are people that we brought into like Crystal Dynamics as testers, and now like he's the president of their at Naughty Dog. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and they make great games, right? Insomniac,
they do.
Great games.
They make the games like you got to wait 5 years for a new Zelda title,
right?
You got to wait 5 years for their product, but it's going to be a success.
It's always going to be good.
I mean, do you remember at the time when Take-Two was going to get purchased? They put themselves up. For sale.
Do remember all of that, man. And I couldn't believe it.
EA was going to buy them. Oh my god! I think it says a lot for them.
Strauss said no.
Good. I was
and Strauss took a lot of heat because I don't know if you
fine, though.
I don't know if you remember, because the stock was like $12 or something.
Yeah, it was
like
very cheap.
and EA offered them like 26.
Yeah, but the thing
Something.
about it is that
I
and
know.
This is not
I'm
to
just-
I
I'm
don't want
just
to talk
saying-
bad
I'm-
about EA, but they would have. I think they would have ruined that IP.
I'm just saying that the money on the table
Yeah.
that Strauss walked away from, like at the time,
Yeah.
people said, "Are you nuts?"
But they're making
and now,
so much.
Now look at the
so much
stock.
more now.
Now look at the stock.
But they're making so much more money. Like once
It
they
is
got
unbelievable.
once they got up to the times and did the online, the GTA online, and got it working, because they tried to do that with
Yeah.
GTA 4. But it wasn't working the same way. Back with Nico. Nico was the main character, the protagonist in that. But then with GTA 5, all the tech was there. Everything looked great. And then they did online on there. People are still playing it now.
I know.
They're making so much
I
money
know.
hand over fist.
And it's just going to continue.
If they would have sold it, you know what would have happened? They would have put GTA on the Origin network. Nobody would have went into the Origin, because you would have to only download it from EA's Origin client.
Yeah.
And then they would have missed out on Sony people just staying with that IP and with that product. So I applaud the decision that they made of not selling out at that point, even though times were tough.
You know, I had a stint though where I worked at EA. I was very fortunate because at the time EA had nobody. Like now they have 20 recruiters and et cetera. I was the only recruiter at EA, and they moved from a small. They had been in Fashion Island, this building, for like, I don't know, 10 years maybe by the time I showed up, and I showed up in like the mid to late 90s maybe, for a couple of years. And just when they opened this new facility that they had, and at the time, now they've got like I think 2 or 3 buildings. At the time they had one building, and they had their own gymnasium with their logo on it, and they would have company meetings in the stands. The stands would come out, you know, like your old high school stadium, basketball arena. And some of my really dear friends I met at EA at the time, and you know, EA takes a lot of politics from people like, oh my gosh, EA, like they're the big behemoth monster, and there's a lot of arguments to be made about that, but there's some great people that work there too.
Yeah, and they've actually done a great product.
Yeah.
I think the thing with EA, I think EA was a little before its time, because EA operated as if other businesses and other business industries operated. EA would come in like a product or like what a company is doing and buy that company.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, let's do something together." They would just buy the company.
Yep.
And then the problems you have there,
And
much
in a way that would kind of
would rub people the wrong
You'd have to
way.
go take a shower if you talked about the details.
Yeah,
You know, people would really be upset.
Exactly. But again, you'd see other industries flourish from that happening. Like when you look at the automotive industry, there's a reason why there's only like a big 3 or 4 companies
Right,
of
yeah.
automobiles that you're buying stuff from, because they buy up the competition.
Right.
And you never know. I think it could serve EA well with how we're going in the future with the whole Stadia or something like that. I think that's how you say it, where
Yeah,
everything's online.
Stadia.
Just like on live, the video games. EA has a plethora of content that they can just put online and just make it, we can stream it.
It's going to
could
be amazing.
It could be crazy, you know, but
Yeah.
what it takes to get to that is what's crazy, because it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of not caring what other studios or people think about you, because EA was just buying. They had the money. They
And
were
you
just
have
buying
to
up
build
people.
that infrastructure on
You
the
do.
back end that is
Yeah.
just so complex.
So that's gonna
to
be
have
interesting.
millions of people online playing.
Yeah.
That's why Google's got the power to step into that and make that happen. Hopefully, we'll see.
And they locked down the sports entertainment aspect
we'll
of it
see.
too. So
You know, it's going to be exciting, right?
it is. It is going to be
Yeah.
exciting. We'll see how that goes. So you're at Universal. We moved ahead a little bit. From Universal, you went to Electronic Arts. You worked
did.
there for 3 years in-house. You were the only person, like you said, they had the Redwood
Yeah.
Shores building. What were some of the things that staffing consultant, is that different than technical recruiting?
No, it's kind of like just a similar title. I'm still responsible for building up the studio. At the time, we were going to get EA.com. They were going to launch their own .com initiative, because this is like the late 90s when the .com explosion is happening. So we were bringing in people like that. They started working with Pogo and developed
that.
Pogo, and so we brought in people to start up that. And
That was
so
like pre-King.
It was pre-King, and so we brought in people for that. We brought in people to start building out back-end systems and platform. This is all brand new stuff. So it was really exciting, right? And some of those people, like I said, all those people that, you know, I've stayed in touch with, now they're in charge of building out platforms for, you know, $1 million systems and, you know, DA average daily active users of hundreds of thousands, you know, very
awesome.
complex systems. And, yeah, they've had great careers. So it's been very fortunate to see how the entire growth in the game industry, which, by the way, they continue to project We get these reports all the time, and I would encourage anyone to look at this. Compared to even consumer products, compared to media and mass publishing, compared to marketing systems, compared to automotive, nothing looks like video games. It's like 15% year in growth for like the next 10 to 20 years. And we're not even talking about, the opportunities in China, which are just off the charts. Like at any given day, there's like 160 million people online playing games in China.
Yeah, and with the growth with AR and mixed reality, which is taking off like crazy.
Yeah, it hasn't really been as...
Well, people are being more creative with it. That's what I
being
mean. Like, I think people really thought that VR was going to be the new frontier. But I think with like the Pokemon Go, the new Wizards game that came out, where they have more augmented reality gameplay, here's the thing. Apple just stopped doing their, AR glasses, right? Or their AR wearables. Whoever comes out with whatever that wearable device is for AR and mixed reality, that's going to be the next billion-dollar company. Or maybe trillion-dollar company.
I think you're right about
because
that.
There's so much content, but even when you see it on LinkedIn, there's so much content out there. But who is going to be walking around with their phone in front of their face, like trying to navigate? Not only is that dangerous, but that's not feasible long term. But if you get whoever gets that wearable technology, where now you can, the latest thing I saw was somebody flipped open a map, like an actual book of a map, and it folded out into like a big map.
So cool.
And then you pick where you want to go, and this airplane comes up, and you just follow this airplane as it goes through the traffic lights and everything like that. I was like, that's pretty awesome. Now, if you have your glasses,
your newspaper too. It's like this little thin plastic thing.
It'll be like Hogwarts.
Yeah.
It will be like this weird Tony Stark mishmash of Hogwarts technology that people want. But once you get that wearable device, I think that's going to change the game.
Did I just say read a newspaper? Because nobody reads newspapers.
Well, people do. Well, they read it digitally now. That's the thing.
I do, but
they get their. Well, I think there's something special about reading the newspaper, but.
No, I gave up. As soon as I got my Kindle and I opened the LA Times on my Kindle, I said, what am I doing with this old paper? The smell, there's nothing advantageous
there's
about
certain,
a newspaper.
I would think there's still certain things, because everybody's not on board with technology. So there are still things you're going to see from the local mom and pop shop who hasn't had the opportunity. They don't have a website. They don't have all this stuff going on. They may have exactly what you're looking for, and you're only going to get that through that media.
Yeah.
Not that... they do need to advance.
having 3 channels in Omaha, Nebraska, maybe. I'm sure they got stuff in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm being facetious, but that kind of thing.
So I see that I mentioned Origin. You've worked on the Origin system for EA. It looks like
I helped them staff up, but they were in Austin. Don't forget. Okay. And so I forget that guy's name. Richard somebody. He flew into space, man. Richard,
is it Garrison or Garrett?
It starts with a G.
Yeah. He has a castle out there.
Yeah, he's really a
with an observatory, I think, at the top.
Yeah. He's very much and he paid like $20 million to fly into space or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, that was like at the time, like nobody had online systems like that. So that was exciting too. And we worked on some great products. Like I got to staff up Madden, and they started a studio in Florida and work with them. At the time, and now Madden is like a perennial $300-400 million event. Like they've got it down, man. And it's just amazing the improvements that they made in these games. It's like what, like the people who just sign up to Madden. I don't know what it's called now, Madden 19. I'm sure it's Madden 19 or Madden. I mean, I haven't played Madden in a while, but it's like nothing compared to what we had back then. Same with the NBA basketballs or now hockey, and they got FIFA is like the number one game in the world.
Super realistic, right? It is. It has more diversity because football is only here. Soccer is a worldwide,
right?
So that's the thing. So that's pretty cool, man.
Need for Speed was a great game too.
Need for Speed was a great game. That was a great franchise.
Yeah.
I remember playing Rivals. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That's where you could play as like either a police officer or just like a rival renegade type person, and you actually were playing the chase mechanic of like, am I going to chase? But you're chasing down real people, which is pretty cool. So I remember getting that when I got the PlayStation 4 because I was streaming myself playing that. And I had people, when I was doing the streaming for Firefall and stuff like that, I had people watching me that were from like Russia because PlayStation 4 didn't come out yet there. And so they were like, oh, this is one of the games we're looking for. And I was like, oh, hello, my Russian brothers. It was pretty funny. So Director of Worldwide Staffing, you went to Reef Internet. So
I did.
Did you got out of the games industry?
I
or
did.
What happened
I was
there?
pulled into,
Did EA burn you out?
No, but there was a person at EA, and this was, I don't know if people can remember, but there were Cisco Systems at the time was like the most unbelievable stock in the history of stocks. Like, they're doing routers, and they're just selling 1 billion of them a day.
So were you looking, since your love of technology is there, were you looking at technology and going like, I think internet is going to be the next big thing. I got to get out of the games industry. Did you ever think that internet and games would just coincide and you'd be like, oh,
I know. That did happen, didn't it? And it's going to continue to even get better and better.
So the difference is, what I want to focus on is coming from the games industry. You were in the games industry. What was that year? That was 97, 2000 that you went from there to the Reef. You saw how laid back it was. You saw how chill it was at work. How was the difference of that, of going into Reef Internet? Like, was it like you had to now dress up?
No.
Be very, was it different?
No, I think that culture kind of permeates throughout the high tech world, kind of. And one of the things I liked about Reef was it was international, which I never got a chance to work on. So, they would fly me to Paris once a month for like a week, and then I would go to Brussels, and I would go to Berlin, and I would go to London, and we would build up teams from there. So I got a chance to work with different cultures and different regulations about how they hire in Europe. You can't just terminate someone in Europe. You got to give them 3 months notice. There's 3 months notice to start. There's all these different variants.
That
about
sounds
labor
very
laws.
similar, not the same, but very similar to California. It's, even though they have the at will,
Yeah.
it seems like it's very difficult to let someone go.
What's really problematic in Europe, and even to hire someone takes a long time because they have to give 3 months notice. You just can't say 2 weeks and I'll be out of here. So, we're talking to Edward about maybe joining a company in Paris or something, and here we are in July, so you might be able to start in October.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool. I guess
really
that makes
like
it where
that.
people don't burn bridges or
Yeah.
mess up product if they go that route. That's interesting. That's cool. So Reef Entertainment, you're there for 2 years. You went on to go to Global Search Tech
I went back into my own kind of
as CEO,
consulting.
so you did your own thing.
Yeah, my own thing, and kept in touch with my
Now,
clients.
was this you solo, or was this you with a handful of people?
Me solo.
Or okay.
Me solo. Yeah, I would go to different clients.
For 4
and just,
years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I decided to get out. I moved out of the Bay Area, moved up to Southern Oregon, and I had my family. I had 3 boys I was raising, and took them out of that environment of Northern California, which I had been living there for like 15, 20 years, which I loved, except for, the housing issues got to be challenging for us, and we went up to Southern Oregon and Ashland, beautiful city. We were able to get a nice home, etc. And I started coming down to the Bay Area, commuting with my clients once in a while, and then I got sucked into Red 5 Studios. Not sucked in, but these were some World of Warcraft.
For 10 years, man.
10 years, yeah.
Director of Talent Acquisition. You were there for a long time.
I was. There was always challenges. And it always looked like something great was going to happen. And, and door number 3 was going to open at any given moment. There was never a time where it's like, what are we doing here?
I think one of the greatest things that happened was building relationships and coming in contact with people that you wouldn't have met outside of
100%, man.
Because creating the product is one thing there. But I think I don't want to say downfall, but I think the thing that was the challenge mostly was that you got so many people who are professional, so many people in different disciplines that could make product, and we've proven that we could make and create. And I think it was we were a little bit before our time, and there was so much gray area where we were like the people in charge, the people that really have the hammer to place down to make decisions. I think there was a little bit of wild west of not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do, because what we were doing was brand new at that company. Because when you look at games now, you look at what Fortnite looks like, you look at what Apex looks like.
It's Firefall.
You look at, there's another game coming out that looks exactly like Firefall. So I think when it comes down to the art we were creating, I can't even
believe we didn't make any money off that game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's like they had to work at not making money off that game.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I don't understand it either. I mean, I went through a time where I went all in on that.
Yeah,
project.
I did too.
And so
a lot of us did.
Yeah,
we put our heart and soul into that company.
And so I think some of us could see the vision of what this could be, and then I think another handful of people were just all about the money and trying to see how
somebody
much money
should
they
write
could
a
make.
book about it. I've been thinking somebody should write a book about that.
And then there were people who they couldn't see it. They were just there doing a job. They were just doing whatever their tasks were. And I think when you have those 3 groups together, and then at the top, if no one's really orchestrating that, it's a recipe for disaster, because now you have.
And I don't have that skill. I don't
groups.
have that insider skill set. I don't know how to judge those people at the top. You know.
Yeah. No, but you did a great job of bringing people together, and so that's what's important.
Yeah, but I'm sure those people were doing the best that they thought they could do at the time. No, nobody's purposely trying to make that not work. No. Okay, maybe.
I don't know.
We have some friends who might think differently.
Right? Yeah, right.
I'm more forgiving, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where, like, when it does come down to it, there was a lot of opportunity there. There was a lot of chances given, but
a lot of talent.
But when it comes down to it, I think there needed to be a visionary up front that could see the full pipeline or layout of the project and where it could go and what it could be,
and I think monetize it,
and how to monetize. And I think we just had people there to be like, "Oh, well, I'm only over this, and I'm only over that, and I'm only over this." And even though the 3 people over those 3 areas that I mentioned before, they were communicating, but I still think no one really knew. It was new. It was new frontier. Yeah. No one knew where to go. I mean, when you look at games like Fortnite wasn't what it was built to be, what it became.
No,
never. The only one that was really built to be something was the Apex Legends that came out. They built that with the intent of being what it is. Even with Overwatch was not what it was. It turned into what, because they all were trying to chase what was popular, what do people like playing, and that's how they made their money. There's another game coming out. It's a smaller studio, but it looks just like Firefall. So with looks out of the way and gameplay now coming into play with the MMO space, and the only real successful MMO has been World of Warcraft. If you look at longevity, so now you're trying to couple that with this art style that we have, and then that's a whole nother beast.
And don't forget too, we built back-end systems. Jeff Barabee built a whole DevOps team of 2025, and we're doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of technology that came out of
and now he's
that time period as well.
I think he's with Bethesda or something, or ZeniMax Online, building and managing all their systems. So much talent on the back end side too.
Yeah, there was a lot of new things going on, and a lot of new tech.
The last 4 or 5 years when we got involved with the 9, which is a publishing house in China, we were able to work, as you say, working with the people. We're making friends with people who grew up in Shanghai, and they're coming to the States, and they're like, "Wow, this is so fun! Show me how to throw a baseball," right? And that was in my, I'm a lot older than you, but when I was a kid, I could never even imagine having a relationship with somebody from China and talking to them. It's this breaks down the whole concept of, I can politics or something, but the whole concept of nationality even goes out the window. Why would you talk about, he's the same as I am. Here's a guy, like a wizard or something like
that's that. That's what you come to learn. Yeah. When you talk about social media and then news and, mainstream media, the picture's always painted differently,
right?
Where everything's negative and bad, and don't talk to people, don't do this. But when
they're the same as us.
Yeah, when you do get out there and you meet people throughout this industry, which is so amazing, they're people. Yeah, they're just people. Yeah. So there is the only difference is
hopes
cultural
and dreams
differences.
You and I have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy, man. So director of talent acquisition, you were at Red 5 for 10 years. You built a lot of people. I think it says something here you founded some of the key developers from World of Warcraft. Yeah, I think it was Mark Kern. Mark Kern was
our CEO. Bill Petrus is one of the founders, and he was the art director. Who was the art director on World of Warcraft? Who is the art director on Overwatch?
Yeah. He carried that style with him throughout his
products. A talent.
So you were there for 10 years. So in December 2006, was the studio just being formed?
What was going on? It was probably, I think I was number 20 or something like that. Yeah.
So been through
Tom Cadwell had been there, who is now the VP of design at Riot.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
So you were there to hire up. I remember when I went there for an interview, you guys were in a small space before we moved to the area near Lake Forest. I wasn't at that one.
Spectrum.
I missed the Spectrum.
That was really nice.
Because when I interviewed at one place, you guys just moved to a new space when I started.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so that's crazy. So what are some of the takeaways when director of talent acquisition? What does that change for you? You've already been your own employer. You already had your own businesses. You've already worked on small scale, large scale for staff recruiting and in that regard and talent acquisition. But now you're the director of talent acquisition. What changes? Is it what?
There's other people that I'm responsible for managing, like sourcers and other recruiters. So we had recruiters in Shanghai for a while. We were building out a studio in Shanghai, and so I was responsible for that. And then we started hiring more additional recruiters in-house at Red 5 and sourcers and like a talent coordinator to manage all the interviews, and then a talent operations person to, tell us how we're doing metrics and analytics and what that's all happening to. So that was exciting. And we would go to various trade shows and have a presence there. And if another studio shut down, we had a organization. We would go there to the studio and be there on site right away with our wares and kind of do our pitch. And one of the most amazing things that we kind of got famous for was called the Golden Ticket Program, which we had MSNBC at the time came and interviewed us, and Erin Burnett, who is now on CNN, has her own show as a newscaster, came to our studio and interviewed all of us. And she interviewed me for like half an hour, and I went home and told all my kids, and oh my gosh, I'm going to be on TV. And I was giving all these, don't forget vanity is the number one of all sins, right? I try to remember that all the time.
Out of 7, yeah.
Out of 7. It's the number one.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to be on TV for and it turns out there's like 30 seconds to me, at the end. But it was like a 7-minute, which is a long time. So the gist of the program is that we identified 120 developers in the game industry. Don't forget, these are really hard to get talent, very sought after. And at the time, there was a little, what was the iPhone? It was for just music. What was that called?
The Nano. I think it was the Nano?
No. Oh my gosh, I can't even think about it, man. It was like the first music that you had, like an MP3 player. Only it was an Apple product.
Anyway. Talking about the iPod?
Maybe.
Talking about just the iPod, right? The one that was like a brick, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we sent those out to everybody, right? And with the 120 in this like really like kabuki kind of case thing. It was really, we paid somebody like $40,000 to develop it in San Francisco and everything. It looked really cool. Like, how do you open this? How do you open that? Like, only a gamer would be into that. And then inside was the iPod and a direct message from our CEO, Mark Kern. And it was very specific, like, hey, Edward Bowman, this is Mark Kern at CEO. We finally able to talk. Hey, we've admired your animation skills for a long time at, what were you at, Vicarious Vision?
That's
really?
correct. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good. We've admired your skill set for long, and we think you'd be great at Red 5. Why don't you log in to red5.com 67506 and let's continue the conversation.
That's cool.
Sure enough, we sent out 120 people logged in, and when you logged in, welcome, Edward. Here's your job at Red 5. Here's what your day-to-day would look like. If you're interested, contact, Jeff or whatever. We ended up hiring like 4 people, which is, out of 120, it's about a 4% return. Maybe,
now, did people,
like
what was that? Did people think it wasn't real or something? Because that's kind of unheard of to get, not poached, but to get approached in that way.
A very unique way.
So what happened for it to be, you hired 4 out of 120?
They were like, the people that we hired were like blown away by it. Like, wow, how unique, how creative, how special, and how, you thought about me.
And
right?
Those are the people that you were like, hey, let's bring these people on.
And we were lucky. We hired like Eric Lasso, who was our AI programmer for years. He's now at Google, very successful, heading up their AI programs. I still talk with him all the time. We play chess all the time online. He's my chess buddy, brilliant chess player. But having an AI programmer is not an easy thing to get, as you well know. And we hired our design director, Scott Youngblood. Came from that, and he had worked on a game called Tribes, which was a similar type of game that we were talking about at the time. Yeah. So we got to be very successful by that. We had an article in the Wall Street Journal about us, and from my perspective, like I said, it was a great recruitment tool because it identified us as, wow, these guys are special. They care about talent. They're creative, and they'll go up. They'll put their money where their mouth is behind going out and finding top talent. And that's golden press, man. How do you get that kind of branding that came out
and that's
of that?
exactly what you did.
Yeah.
Like I do applaud you. You found a lot of people.
It was really good.
Who were very passionate about their discipline, and it's rare to have a team built like that these days. So I do applaud that. That was pretty awesome. So if we go back now, we're looking at you're at Ubisoft. So 3 years. What is your takeaway from? Is there a difference between being a director going back to senior, or is it all the same? It's the same work.
It's kind of the same, except I don't have to be responsible for managing people, which I don't. I kind of like.
Yeah, but it takes your time away from doing what you love doing, which is
I mean, I like both sides of the coin, to be honest with you, and I would manage people again because I love mentoring people and getting people on board. There's so many recruitment techniques that we can talk about. It's all about, first of all, identifying the talent. That's one thing, right? Hey, what do you need, Edward? Like if you were the hiring manager and you're talking to me, oh man, I really need a gameplay programmer. Okay, well, that's a broad thing to talk about. Can you give me more specifics? Yeah, I'd really like them to do, tell me more. Where would you like to see them from? And then you got to go, from me, like we go into like, your little man cave here, right? You got to go online and get into your little zone and go, where am I going to find these people? And then you start building out lists. It's called sourcers. Nowadays, that's very compartmentalized. We have people that just do that. Can you imagine? That they go out and try to find people. Because not everybody wants to be found.
Right, that's true.
Right? The people that are on LinkedIn, everybody says everybody's on LinkedIn. No, everybody's not on LinkedIn.
There's still a huge group of people that
There's
are
a
not.
huge group that has no interest on being LinkedIn.
Yeah.
They get reached and people are poking them all the time. And they don't want to be poked. Right? And you have to respect that. Right? But we have to build out what kind of talent, where are we going to find them, and then how are we going to go about getting them. So the first thing is identifying the talent. The next one is building out who that talent is. And then it's like, what is our messaging? Because you only get one shot. I get to pull your sleeve one time and say, hey, Edward, my name's Jeff. Look at what I got over here. Look at my playground. What do you think? That's all I get. And I hopefully you'll say, wow, tell me more. And hopefully you'll say, okay, I'll talk to you tonight at 8. And then we're off to the races, I hope. If I can get you on the phone for a half hour, 45 minutes, I hope,
That's awesome, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So what would you say, you were a philosophy major. So how has philosophy helped you out throughout your career? Is it more of the reading of people, how to communicate with people? What would you say?
Well, the first thing is I never had to go through a midlife crisis where I have to wonder like what's this all about because I already did it.
Okay. Okay. So, don't jinx yourself, man. There's a lot of wood right here. Get to knocking.
Maybe there's some time left that's going to happen. But getting all that stuff out of your brain, in the youth. So, like, hey, what would happen if some alien came and took all of our atoms and just blew us up and then they reproduced all of our atoms? Would we still be the same people? Like, I wrote papers on that.
And how would you know?
Yeah, and how would you know? I wrote papers on that in the 20s. So that kind of conversation is of no interest to me anymore.
Oh, you know what? I mean, if that's what you're saying you were doing with your philosophy major, it seems like it was more of like a creative outlet.
No,
am I wrong?
It was also logical. Yeah, it was very creative, which I grew up in a very creative family. My mother was an artist, which benefited me tremendously so I can talk to the art and I understand. I don't want to say
what type of art. Let's just say what type of art was it that
she was a painter. She was a sculptress.
Okay.
And had a love for it and taught me the love for it and the respect for it. Like I still get chills. Like I walked into the Chicago Art Museum and they're well known because they've got that Whistler's Mother. No, they've got the one about what's it called? American Gothic with the guy with the pitchfork, the farmers in front of the house. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, him and his wife standing.
Him and his wife standing with a pitchfork.
Yeah.
And by the way, the painting's like 12 inches by 18 inches.
It's tiny, right?
And that's not my thing. Like that doesn't like give me goosebumps. But I'm walking around here and all of a sudden they have a room that's like 30 feet by 30 feet. And they've got this Jackson Pollock on the wall that's like 20 yards by 10 yards on one wall. And man, like people can say what they want about Jackson Pollock, but and I don't know if you saw the movie about him, but I walked in that room and I had goosebumps for like 15 minutes looking at this thing.
Because the sheer amount of skill and time
I don't know how a
create.
human did that. I don't. It's like mesmerizing, man.
It's those aliens you're talking about.
I don't know, and I still get that way about like Van Gogh or like we were talking earlier about Picasso and what an asshole as a person he was. Yeah. Right.
Well, it's appreciating the arts.
Oh my God, you look at some Picassos and you just like drop your jaw. And I'm that way about video game, like Bill Petrus.
Yeah.
We had talked about him as an art director. We were going over portfolios, and he was looking at somebody had created a creature of like a walrus with these tusks, and I go, "Oh my God, Bill, that's beautiful." He goes, "No, I can't do it." I go, "What do you mean? It's like gorgeous." He goes, "Look at those tusks, man. There's no stain on them. They're just so clean." And I go, "Oh, that's what he's looking at." I didn't even see it.
How weathered
like
is
you
it,
look
yeah.
at something like, I send you an animation reel and I go, "Hey, Edward, I think this animation reel looks really cool." And you go, I don't think so, because, and
It depends what we're looking for.
Right,
It's
but
being
I
judgmental
learned
in
from
way.
that, right? When
Yeah.
you tell me, "Oh, I need somebody who can do this."
Yeah, you did. You did learn from
So
that.
I like to be, and I learned that from my mother, I think, being a good listener. And then when somebody does send in something like that, they're putting their artistic thing on the line. They don't want to, first of all, they don't want to hear nothing back. They don't want to be ghosted. But they want to know, like, "Hey, how can I improve?" And they don't want to hear, "How can I improve?" Like, "Hey, Edward, this is really not good." They want it in a positive way. I remember,
I think a lot of that goes for your appreciation too.
Yeah,
of,
I think
of
so.
What you do, because I've worked at places where I would get sent animation reels, and I'm like, this isn't gonna cut it. I don't think this guy or girl is into what we're looking for. But then when I send that back, I get 10 more of the same thing, and I'm like, oh man, I don't think this person. They're just doing a job at that point.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're just like, here's 10 more
yeah,
people.
there's a lot of recruiters, and that's the other thing we could talk about. But the word recruitment to me is like somebody who worked at an agency where they're responsible. They got to make their own. I told people I made my own living. Somebody at like an HR in a big, huge behemoth like a Blizzard, and they get 50 resumes an hour. And they're just looking through resume. This goes to programming. This goes to design. And then they say, "I'm a recruiter at Blizzard." Come on, and I can smell that. Like, and most people can't.
The
right?
work hasn't been put in to appreciate what that.
They're not
skill
reaching
is.
out to anybody.
Right.
Right. They're not recruiting anybody. They're paper shufflers. So that happens too.
Yeah.
But we digress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you would say to a person in college? Because I've talked to many people in this industry and where they gotten their start. A lot of people, such like yourself with philosophy, I think that complements what you do. But I don't think philosophy and where you are now, like, it's not a one-to-one. It complements what you do, but you could have went to school for communication. That would complement it too. So what would you say to people who are in college that are looking to go into technical recruitment or recruiting? Like, is it important to take up something in college that's beneficial, or is it just about living life, experiencing life, and knowing how to communicate with people?
I think so. I think being a communicator, PR people are good at this. People who have attention to detail, people who play games and know about games and have a passion for that.
Or just knowing about your product.
Knowing about your product. And I think one of the strengths of, now that I can look back, like, when you get to my stage in your career and stuff, you start to recognize what your strong points are and what your weaknesses are. And I think one of the strong points I have, and I can just continue to have an innate curiosity about both people and products and games. And I think that's benefited me really well. Keep being curious, keep asking questions, keep talking to people, keep improving your skills, keep getting better. You want to be able to, a lot of our work is customer support, customer service for the hiring managers. These people are responsible for, multi-million-dollar projects, for getting things done. They're looking to you to find them the top talent. Having a relationship with them on a one-on-one, getting feedback from them on the resumes you send. Where would we go? What games do you like to see people from? How am I missing the mark on this candidate? What can I do to improve? I remember Lewis, I think he's an animator at Red 5, long hair. What was his name? Lucas
Carnes. Yeah.
Is that him?
Yeah.
I'll never forget one time, he told me one time, I said, what kind of sets you apart from the rest of the crowd? He goes, "You know what? I actually like criticism." I go, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, how else am I going to learn?" I mean, most of us get criticized and we kind of crawl into our hole and think, "Oh my God," but it's not about you, right? You're a beautiful, loving person. You got a great wife. You got people love you, but here you are now putting out your wares and people give you money for that. So we're allowed to say, "Hey, Edward, on this product, it's not about you. Once again, you're a beautiful, loving person, but we would really like to see X."
Yeah.
And you're not giving us X.
Yeah.
So can you please give us X? And if you can't, that's okay. Somebody else might like your Y, but we need an X. Okay? That's all there is to it. And it has to be that cut and dried because it is a monetary business
At the end of the
event.
day, yeah.
It
At the
is.
end of the day, it
You know,
is.
somebody's paying the money.
Yeah.
And there's a time, you know, even though we don't like to think about it, there's a clock on money, right? It's going, you know, as soon as you start.
Yeah.
So
That's cool, man. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. I think the information that you share with us today is going to help out a lot of people. I think when you talk about recruiting, I think it goes lost. Everybody wants to be animator, modeler, texture, but it's very important to be a recruiter as well, because it's having to build those relationships with people and then being able to be that person who can act as the spear to get those people together to make a product. And I think that's important as well. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that, you know, it's kind of interesting that we're doing this, because in my next, and I've thought about this often, because now there's so many colleges and universities that have programs for game development. And yet when I talk to their like career centers, career services, they're not aware of the opportunities or how to educate these people for creating resumes, how to do a portfolio, where to go to get the right kind of engineering skill sets that I need to be a programmer, and the different programming opportunities, the different type of design. You know, we talk about game design. There's like 7 different disciplines that you could follow and row that you need to know, you should know about.
Yeah. So you can make a wise decision.
You can make a wise,
same
with art, right? We have concept artists, and even within the world of concept artists, I need a concept artist that's photorealistic. I need a concept artist that's like humans. I need a concept artist. Remember we had a person just did landscapes and trees. Remember? Like that was his job, doing trees, right? And I don't think people are aware of this. So my next career, I want to do this. I'm going to go to various schools and put on seminars how to get involved in the game industry. And
that's awesome.
Show me your portfolio, because I learned so much. You know, take out your high school stuff that you loved when you were 17 in your portfolio, because guess what? Nobody wants to look at it anymore. I mean, I'm sure you like your Albert Einstein from 17. It looks pretty cool, but not anymore, right? Show me that you've got a passion for games. Everybody's got the thing is now, everybody's got their narrative down. Hey, tell me about, Edward, how'd you get involved in games? Boom, everybody's got that down, right? But now we drill down to the next level. Hey, Edward, what were the circumstances that led you to go to the University of Texas and get a degree in animation? Oh, not just, hey, why'd you go to the University of Texas? Well, it was a good school. And no, what were the circumstances? Oh, well, you know, my mom, I actually had to work in a grocery store to pay. You paid for your own? Yeah. And while I was there, I got involved with these guys, and we started making our own game. You did? You made your own game? Yeah, it was really cool. We did it. Those are the people we want, right? Self-motivated, passionate about the industry. Because who's going to say, I'm not passionate about games. I've always been a gamer. I want to get involved in the games. Well, what's the next question? Really? Tell me more. What have you done? What have you done in the last year in your profession that you spent money out of your own pocket to improve your skill set? You know, I asked myself that question. Well, I bought a book on recruitment. Okay, I did that. Well, you know.
But did you read it? That's the next thing, right? Did you stop at page 50? So it's like, but I see what you're saying. I think that is very important.
And getting resumes too. People nowadays, like some people like, oh, I was told I could only have a 1-page resume. I don't know who told anybody that, you know. And I get different kind of formats that are like difficult to read, you know. And then you have to understand.
I think
too,
that's what people are trying to be different. They're trying to stand out.
Okay.
I think
but you have to understand that I'm looking at 30 resumes a day.
Exactly. So there's certain ways or certain opportunities where you should want to stand out, and there's certain opportunities where you need to have a little bit of conformity, because, like you're saying, if you're going through the shuffle, okay, boom, you stood out because your format's different.
Yeah.
But now in reading what your format is, I'm not finding the meat of what I need to see. So good job on being creative, on your format being different, but you missed out on the content.
I need to know who you are, what your strong points are.
Exactly. So I think that's where that's coming from.
Cover letters, like sometimes I get cover letters like, there's no way I'm going to read 2 pages of anybody. People don't read anymore. Don't forget that. People read like 4 or 5 sentences, and then they want to see a picture.
I think it would be how captivating it is. A lot of people are asking for CVs, but I think they're doing that to see how much education you have on the company and how much you know about what you're trying to get into, so they can see, oh, okay, well, you know what we do, come aboard. Like what you were saying earlier in your stories about, you know, you take someone off into that room for 15 minutes and you're like, what color were the walls? What color was his shirt he had on? You know, how many times was he blinking at you before he started talking? You know, all those things matter. So I think that it's a similar observation.
The other thing is you have to treat looking for a job as a job.
That's true.
Nobody's going to
agree
come
with
to you. I mean, you might be lucky, and somebody might come to you. A lot of us get the next jobs from friends.
I think that's
and
over
contacts.
time. Because like
It
you said,
does
you build
happen
relationships with
over
people.
time.
You're doing what you love doing, and then out of nowhere, out of the blue, you'll get hit with an opportunity, and you go, should I
But
take that opportunity or not?
this, as you well know, this industry can be it's very wonderful and challenging and loaded with creative people. And when you hit a success, it's like amazing because you worked on a product that's being seen and enjoyed by millions. That's incredible, right? You go home and your kids are playing the game that you helped make. Wow. But on the other side of the coin, if you don't hit it, it's lights out tomorrow, like Friday. And so now it's like, oh, what do I do now? And that can happen to any of us. And people forget that. I tell people this is not the post office.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee. There's no what do you call it, pension plan?
It's the same thing
Right.
with success too. Like I've seen a lot of people be successful, and next thing you know, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, and they forget this is what made you. This is what gives you the lifestyle you want to lead. And if you just
can go
maintain
away.
it and nurture it,
Yeah.
you could be fine. But a lot of times they'll become complacent with that and go, I'm not happy anymore. What?
Yeah.
And then now they're going back on that railway of what you just described of like lights out tomorrow because they made a choice. They weren't happy with something, which is you're able to make that choice.
And those
not
people
happy.
don't know how to go about searching for a job. I want to help those people, and I really can't do that in my current position. But I'm telling you, in my next career, I want to figure out how to do that. And I really we do internship programs, and we go to USC, and we go to these various colleges, and some of these they're so appreciative to get even an internship.
Because there's a lot of people that really want to get in the industry, and I think the more people that you can get in the industry or get over that hump they may be experiencing, that's that new creative blood. That's that new inspiration
Absolutely.
that's going
and
to elevate
they're
us
your
further.
users today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The other thing that's really
They're streamers.
The other thing that's changing the industry now too is DI, diversity and inclusion, which is becoming such a formidable challenge too, because I don't know what the numbers are, but Gamma Sutra does an annual, it's something like 40% of all game developers are white males between the ages of 25 and what? Yeah, and it's starting to change. And we go to like Grace Hopper Conference, Women Technology. We find people there, but to find a senior gameplay programmer that's been a gameplay programmer for like a woman for like, it might be like a 5 or 10%er, in other areas of disciplines it's higher, which is good.
Yeah, diversity is huge.
It's totally
I remember
great.
when I got into the industry, I was like the only African-American person, black person at the studio many times over.
Yeah.
But I don't go into it looking at that. I go into it looking at what kind of team is here. What is the team creating? How passionate are the people? That race and discrimination and stuff like that really doesn't ever come up until someone makes it come up or
Right.
someone is pushing. That's their agenda to try to make drama happen or something like that. But other than that, I think it's all based
I've never
off
really
of
experienced that. Have you?
what?
Like racism, outright racism? in the
Of
game
course,
industry?
yes. I've experienced racism, ageism.
I experienced ageism. I've had somebody ask me like, dude, how old are you? Like,
Yeah.
I said, you can't legally ask that question.
Yeah.
Age is a protected class.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's like asking me, are you a black guy? Are you Christian?
Yeah,
Are you a
it's
Democrat?
bad. It happens. But
Yeah.
a lot of things, people don't talk about it. It's almost like politics and religion. Like there's certain things people don't talk about. That doesn't mean those things don't happen.
Right.
It's just that who's reporting those things, and the person that they're happening to, they may not feel reporting is the best thing to do because you don't want to get blacklisted
right.
in this
They're
industry.
in their job
Once you get
and-
blacklisted, you're done. I don't care if you start your own company or do whatever. Good luck because no one's going to want to work with you. Someone that you've rubbed the wrong way is going to still remember. They're still going to end up getting reached out to. And they're going to tell that story from 10 years ago or whatever that happened. And you're going to be like, wow, this was a great opportunity. I just got passed over. Like,
Yeah,
what
I would
happened,
never burn bridges. Try not do that.
Yeah.
But getting back to like if I was a college student now and I'm in college, I'm at Full Sail or I'm at DigiPen or I'm at one of the numerous like USC programs or colleges, Brown University, any college. I would start thinking about what your resume is going to look like, and then once you graduate and you start to look for a game, I would do a spreadsheet on, these are the companies that I have. These are make sure you have a LinkedIn profile that looks good, that tells me a little bit about yourself.
That's huge. I don't think people know how huge LinkedIn really is.
Picture too. And once again, tell me a little bit. Not just I just graduated with a degree in computer science from University of Texas. Okay, well, what? So,
look at it from this perspective. So that's good. You're talking about like people wanting to get into the games industry, but what about that person that wants to get into the recruitment field of the games industry? What are some of the things they should focus on to get to where you are?
There's a lot of jobs for sourcers, which is like I mentioned earlier, your job is to find these people, and you have to start out by having those skill sets. So having what we call Boolean operator skill set, like how to go about finding resumes, how to go about even using somebody's Twitter profile. You can search Twitter profiles, and maybe a Twitter profile says, I'm a developer at EA. Now I've got your Twitter handle. So how are you going to contact them? How are you going to go about that? How are you going to do a flip and search? How are you going to do X-rays? So having that kind of technical skill set would be really good to start out as sourcing. And a lot of people, I would hire a sourcer who can show me oh no, I really know my Boolean operators. I know how to go about finding people. I know how to find resumes online. I can pull these searches out. I can pull these people from a flip and search or from an X-ray. I know I have that skill set. I would kind of drop my jaw. The other thing that I find amazing, and from the old school that I come from, in the days where people would reach out with a phone call. My phone number is on my LinkedIn site. I've had one person that's ever called me and say, hey, Jeff, my name's Jim, and I really have an interest in getting involved in, and I got to go, Jim, you did the right thing, first of all, by calling me. I don't know who, but I'd like to see your resume. That was my reaction. People think, I don't want to bother him. I don't want to send him an email. I don't want to follow up. No, you have to be persistent. Maybe there's
proactive.
Maybe there's a bunch of people that go, I'm sick of this guy emailing me. Get rid of him. Yeah. But I think most people would say, wow, this person
is
really
very persistent.
Yeah, I tell people try to be politely obnoxious, right? Where you're kind of like a bluebird. Is that what bluebirds are? They come up to you on a picnic table and they almost come right up to you and start biting your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. What are you doing? They don't care, right? Yeah. And sometimes they get a bite of your peanut butter sandwich, right? And also keep track of, like I said, treat it like a job, express sheet. On June 7th, I said Edward Bowman at, NCSoft, whatever, Nexon. I sent him a resume. I sent him resume A, because why do you have one resume? Well, Edward's looking for something. You got to tweak it to make it look like Edward, I sent him a follow-up email and haven't heard back, He emailed me back 7:10, say he's interested in phone screen. 7:10, I had a phone screen with Edward, Keep track of all that stuff. It's going to pay off.
That's awesome. Well, again, I appreciate it. I think this was awesome.
I think it's great you're doing this.
Thank you very much.
Seen by a lot of people.
Thank you, man.
Always good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Edward.
This was awesome. Thank you very much. Hope you guys learned something new. We'll be back with another show soon. Thank you very much.